The alchemical process is a simple one. You start with your ingredients: petals and weeds, gems and hides, meat and teeth. You grind them up, unlocking their alchemical properties. And then to brew, an alchemical retort is required. A fire to boil a potion, an elixir, a brew of magical qualities. To fine-tune and improve, an alembic is needed. And to remove harmful elements, a calcinator will do the trick. These are the 4 elements of alchemy, each a step in the process to create potions of splendor, potions to heal, potions to fortify, potions to shield, and even poisons to apply. And that intro brings me to today's episode of Morrowind Modding Showcases. I'm your host, Dark Elf Guy, and today we're covering The Art of Alchemy, a gameplay mod by Vitruvian Guar. Arguably one of the biggest overhauls made for Morrowind's alchemical gameplay mechanics. There's a decent bit to go over here, so, we're going to spend a bit of extra time today just covering the features in The Art of Alchemy. For it is a transformative experience, and one that makes some pretty big changes to the whole potion brewing process. So let's go ahead and begin with the basics. In vanilla Morrowind, all alchemical ingredients were essentially the same. They all had alchemical properties that you could discover by improving your alchemical skill. And you could even eat them if you so desired. Just, don't ask how you're supposed to eat raw glass. With the Art of Alchemy, however, ingredients are now divided into 3 subgroups. Sorbol, that's your flora, fungi, powders, and all that whatnot. Things like heather and black anther, which have all of their alchemical properties, and are ready to be brewed into potions. Poorly sorbol, that's your meat, hides, teeth, scales, and claws. Things like crab meat or Kaguti hides, that only have one alchemical effect, and need to be treated to unlock additional properties. And insoluble, that's your ores, gems, metals, glass, and rocks. Things like rubies, scrap metal, diamonds, ebony ore, which have no initial alchemical properties at all, and need to be grinded into a powder to unlock their alchemical effects. In vanilla Morrowind, alchemy had 4 different kinds of apparatuses: mortar and pestles, retorts, alembics, and calcinators. But they could all be used to brew potions, whether you had only one of them or all of them, which means they functionally had few real differences between them. That is no longer the case with the Art of Alchemy, and now each apparatus has a specific role in the alchemical process. The mortar and pestle, for example, is used to grind poorly soluble and insoluble ingredients, unlocking their alchemical properties. This includes a new animation, as your character will, with mortar and pestle in hand, just visually grind down the ingredient materials. Depending on the ingredients being ground, your alchemical skill, and the quality of the mortar and pestle, this could take a bit of time. And of course, depending on your skill, there's also a risk of failure. You could, inadvertently, just destroy the ingredient you're trying to grind into a powder. A potentially painful lesson if, you accidentally destroy a diamond. But, on the other hand, if you have a high enough skill and a high quality mortar and pestle, you could actually produce multiple portions of diamond dust from a single diamond, allowing you to brew multiple potions from just one diamond. So there's a bit of a trade-off there in terms of the skill and the quality of your equipment. Next is the alchemical retort, the apparatus that you'll be using to actually brew your potions. Now, when you click on an alchemical retort, you'll be able to filter your ingredients by magical effect, as you can see here. And a note, this list of magical effects only includes the magical effects for the ingredients that you currently have in your inventory. Now, to begin brewing a potion, just simply select one of these magical effects to filter ingredients, and then select up to 3 ingredients. You'll note that any matching effects will be highlighted between these ingredients, so they might just, potentially have more than one effect in common. Also note that you can brew multiple potions at once by using the arrow keys to increase the number of ingredients. But you can only brew up to 3 potions at a time per retort, because each retort has a maximum capacity of 6 ingredients. Like with the mortar and pestle, brewing potions is now in real time. When the potion is being brewed, a fire will light underneath the retort, and a progress bar will appear. While the potion is brewing, you can go off and do something else, like grind up some more ingredients, or else go out adventuring until your potions are ready. Regardless of where you are, you'll get a notification when your potion is finished brewing. And when a potion has been brewed successfully, and yes, there is still a chance of failure, the alchemical retort will give off a magical effect, corresponding to the type of potion being brewed. And you can set up as many retorts as you like to brew just a bunch of different potions all at once, allowing you to essentially create an automated factory of potions. You're only limited to the number of retorts and ingredients that you have. And that's right, Nolkera, there's a new alchemist in town, and I'm going to flood the market. Once you've brewed a few potions, you may want to mix and match their effects to create even stronger brews and elixirs. And that's where the Alembic comes in. With an Alembic, you can combine 2 potions, provided that at least half of their effects are the same. And you can choose whether or not this will enhance those effects, becoming stronger, or filter those effects, becoming weaker. Basically, this allows you to create a stronger potion out of 2 weaker ones. For example, you can take 2 water-walking potions and combine them, concentrating their effects to get a single stronger potion. Alternatively, this also allows you to combine more complex effects. As, obviously, with a retort, you're limited to only 3 ingredients, which also limits the number of effects that you can add onto a potion. But, as long as at least half of those effects are the same, you can join the effects of 2 potions, allowing you to create a potentially very complex effect combination into a single brew. It's worth noting that some effect combinations have synergetic properties, giving them a 10% boost in strength. For example, combining shock resistance and lightning shield will result in a stronger potion, both in terms of shock resistance and the lightning shield, than either effect would produce by themselves. You can play around with the effect combinations to find other synergetic combos to make even better potions. Finally, we come to the calcinator, which now plays a very specific role in the alchemical process, namely the removal of negative or positive effects. Often, when brewing potions, you might be left with a few negative effects, like creating a water-walking potion that also has damage health or drain fatigue, which, isn't maybe quite what you had in mind when making a water-walking potion. You can use a calcinator to winnow out those negative effects, either reducing them in power or removing them completely, leaving just a purely beneficial potion behind. Alternatively, if you're creating poisons, you can also clear out unintended positive effects. And yes, by the way, this will work with poison crafting, so you'll be able to coat your weapons with the poisons that you create. That's all the major apparatuses and their functions in the art of alchemy. Though, there's a few other features here that are worth noting. Notably, in the base game, you couldn't brew your own potions for various quests. You had to use pre-created potions to complete those quests that require an alchemical solution. Which, honestly, that feels like a missed opportunity a bit on Bethesda's part. But now, with the art of alchemy, you can actually create pre-generated potions by just holding down the control key and hitting the create button, which will reduce the power of the potion to the nearest quality standard of the potions in the vanilla game, allowing you to use them to complete quests. And now there's a few other features and new additions here, with options for rebalancing alchemical apparatuses, potion rebalancing, and ingredient overhauls, adding some effects that weren't included in any of the vanilla game ingredients, and just so on and so forth. And naturally, there's a mod config here where you can adjust and turn on or off most of the major and optional features here. You can even adjust how long, in terms of game time, it takes to brew potions. Though note, the longer it takes, the more alchemical experience your character will gain. So your patience will be rewarded with just more of that sweet XP. But the end result here is one of the biggest overhauls ever made for Morrowind's alchemical mechanics. And I think the first major real-time overhaul for this particular gameplay feature. Just utterly transforming the way you brew potions, with new animated effects, lots of quality of life improvements to make it easier to brew potions, and a fun new functionality for the game's alchemical equipment. If you're at all a fan of alchemy, this mod is certainly worth giving a try. There's basically just nothing else quite like this out there. But that's pretty much the end of our showcase here. So, as always, I've been your host, Golf Guy. Thanks for watching, stay safe, stay healthy, happy modding, and I'll see you all next time.